Hey guys, welcome to another commentary done by Diggity really fast, giving you guys the overview of everything that's well, mostly the overview. I think I still need to update a few of the players top left, but right now we're going to go into the 2-0 bracket. We're going to see Yuey going up against NewOcean. Go ahead and start that off. Top right-hand corner, or sorry, bottom right-hand corner, we have NewOcean starting as the yellow Protoss. Upper left-hand corner, we have Yuey starting as the purple Zerg. Both of these guys are guys that the way they're playing, I could definitely see this rematch in the semifinals. And I wouldn't be shocked to see both of these guys exiting at 3-0 or at 3-1 out of the bracket, and then placing and being able to skip the initial round of the pseudo round of 16, round of 12, which I'll fill that in. I'll have a graphic for that. In fact, I think what I'll do is I'll skip the initial graphics and just give you guys the heads up whenever I'm like switching round to round, so you can see what the overall. I'll do at the beginning and then the conclusion. How about that? The conclusion out of as we're moving out. But anyway. I'm expecting some really interesting play. Yuey has been showing some fantastic, really strong macro and really strong micro play. Really heads up Zerg. And NewOcean's just had a really fun style as of late. He's been mixing it up. He's been throwing in 2 gates. He's been doing all sorts of very interesting things, very heads up play. And as a result, he's been giving Zerg players in particular a hard time as... how do I put this? I think sometimes the players that have been playing since the beginning, every once in a while, I actually remember this instance where I won't talk about the opponent. There was an old school player from an old school clan called SMI named Spades, who ended up playing on Blue Storm at some point, and he was just kind of throwing out old school knowledge at another guy who was trying to play the more modern style. And because there was that depth of knowledge, he was able to do a lot of interesting things, and we are going to see a 2-gate opener, by the way, once again here from NewOcean. And effectively, I feel like it's one of those things where players over time, if they haven't filled in those knowledge gaps in between, they're trying to play to current meta, there can be the stumbling block where it's like, oh, I'm not sure what to do against this. And I think that I kind of like what NewOcean's doing in particular is expand. One, it expands, it can expose some trouble. 2, I think it does fairly well. Interestingly enough, I think it does fairly well against overpool rather than 9-pool. Looks like we're seeing actually a 12 hatch, or I'm sorry, this was a 9 hatch at opposite location, it looks like. And so big macro opening here from Yuey. So Yuey showing some variation rather than just the overpool, which I like that adjustment on a 4-player map. But this could potentially be challenging to defend the 2-gate. The Zealots very likely will be able to get in the natural expansion and create some havoc. And it could take a minute for Yuey to get stabilized. One with larva, because you can see there's not a lot of larva that have been saved, but also just get the Zerglings out in the field. NewOcean, however, is got to feel a little bit troubled, because this is going to be cross spawn, which means the Zealots are going to have the longest travel path to get their way across. But with the 9-pool, or I should say the 9 hatchery across the field, that will provide a little bit of more space compared to something like just a straight up overpool or 9-pool. As far as like raw unit production, I actually feel like a 12-pool. Anyway, I will talk about that later. So the Zealots, the probes, know what direction they're heading. They're grouping up. The hatchery's already going to be finished on point. I'm not sure if Yuey's gotten edges of view. I think he has spotted this. He's already dropping a creep colony to draw some fire. He's got a lot of Zerglings constructed, and he just needs to keep those Zerglings queued up. Is dropping a 3rd hatchery in base. So Yuey showing some adjusted creativity. Recognize and that just shows he's playing well. He knows what he's up against. He saw the volume of Zealots and knew that he was up against a 2-gate. So dropping that additional hatchery to get additional larva so he can keep because oftentimes the break point for Zerg in the midst of this is having larva to repel the troops and just not having enough raw larva to spend the resources that you're getting out. And right now, dropping gas, I'm presuming what Yuey's going to do is just try to get the gas out to get 1, Zergling speed, and 2, adjust should Zealot production halt, moving out with a good swarm to keep an eye on those Zealot forces. So again, because of the cross position and some other factors, we've got 6 Zealots waiting across. It's actually a pretty good number. I would say this is about even forces if they're engaging over the sunken colony, and depending on how that engagement happens. But NewOcean, not missing a beat, has already dropped a proxy pylon here at the 9 o'clock base. So really going to test Yuey. And are we going to see a proxy Stargate or something along those lines? We'll have to see. Does he have the cybernetics core finished? No cybernetics core he could also proxy some additional gateways in the midst of this. It looks like he is dropping yet a 3rd gateway on position, but with that 3rd hatchery and sufficient Zergling production and potentially Zergling speed not that far off, this is going to be a tough cookie to break, is what it comes down to. So Yuey, we'll see if he ends up spotting and recognizing that there's a 3rd gateway out in position. The Overlord's slowly making the way across. I do believe that NewOcean is going, or that Yuey will have an alert, a strong alert as he's making his way across, that there's a lack of a cybernetics score anywhere on the front, and that should give him potential forewarning that he's going up against proxy gateways. Because if you see no cybernetic score here, you see only 2 gates here, and you see no nexus, those resources have to be going somewhere. Zergling speed upgrading, layer tech also upgrading. So 4-gate production. If Yuey recognizes it, yeah, he's diving in, he's checking the natural expansion, very likely will drop some additional sunken colonies. The Zerglings mixing it up against the Zealots. The Zerglings peeling back initially, looking to regather and keep the Zealots clumped. Unfortunately, that's working against Yuey a little bit, is getting spread out and grouped upon. The sunken colony is now dispatched. There's still a lot of Zerglings, and the fight has not completed, but it looks like NewOcean getting the better part of this engagement. A lot of the Zealots have not been focused fired, and the Zerglings have more or less been expended. And a lot of that was because they just weren't fighting for large portions. They were getting contained and not able to engage. Hydralis Den is up, by the way. More Zerglings being produced. The drones trying to flee down to the natural expansion. It looks like this might be full breach, and this was before the additional gateways were even a factor. Zergling speed just about finished. Yuey down to 9 drones. So this looks like it's potentially going to be a NewOcean win off a 2-gate into 4-gate play. And unfortunately, Yuey just, I think it was more of a micro problem and getting boxed into that backhand, and maybe a recognition problem, not dropping additional sunken upon noticing the lack of natural expansion and no cybernetic score as well. Drones trying to defend themselves, but it looks like this is NewOcean's game to drop right this second. Nice drone drill there from Yuey. Still 2 Zealots in the base, and the flood is going to continue. Plus, you've got the proxy Zealots, and there's GG from Yuey. Good play from NewOcean. Game 1 to secure it, and again showing his capacity to keep these Zerg off balance. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm gonna move to game 2. Thanks for listening.